The question, what tips should I follow to write an interesting poem? Some poems are your thoughts on something. Poems that I think are interesting are stories. What distinguishes poetry from prose is mostly the musicality of the language. Lyrical or poetical are terms we use when prose is crossing over into poetry. Poetry, even more musically rendered, we call song. It is more complex than that, but in some manner, as Oshké says, the poem must flow. Either through meter and rhyme or in the more varied spoken word characteristics of the human voice. I see or overhear little stories, and yes, I do listen to other people's conversations. Sometimes you just get someone else's drama and I think afterwards something about the experience. I think it is interesting to speak in two voices in a poem. So I intersperse my thoughts interweaved with the other person's story. I present the other person in first person as I present my point of view in first person. When performed as spoken word but just single-voiced, just me performing the piece, it is obvious the two first persons. Another variant is I simply write it as a two-voice poem and me and my wife perform the piece. I am not suggesting anything like this for you, just giving you an example of what makes something interesting. We as creatures want and indeed hunger for other people's experiences. But what we most desire is the story to be delicious. You have asked a very good question, what makes a poem interesting? In performance poetry, what it is not is overly dramatic movement or shouting, histrionics. It is rather a compelling story. That is what is mesmerizing. In written word you have to work a bit differently as the human voice is less apparent. It is there just less so than spoken word. In free verse, what suffices are road maps of line breaks and cadence, alliteration, a modicum of adverbs and as few adjectives as is possible. If metered and rhyme, then you are introducing a very specific cadence and musicality to the piece, and you just cannot cram every subject into one specific rhyme scheme. Pick your rhyme scheme as the poem's story dictates. In the end, however you construct this piece, the story, this human experience is what you are communicating. If you want it to be interesting, be really interested.